Okay, hello everyone. I am going to be interviewing Trish Ahjel Roberts today, and I'm so honored to have her with us. She's a best-selling author, transformational coach, happiness expert, and professional speaker. And she's just returning from a trip from Ghana, and I'm so excited to talk to her about that. She's the founder of the Mind Blowing Happiness coaching company, the Black Vegan Life event brand, and the Black Girl Joy Experience, her flagship program. She has several books that she's published, and she's working on another one that's going to be published next spring. So I'm excited about that also. And what we have in common, and the reason why I have her here today, is because in her work, she has talked a lot about trauma and about adjustments in lifestyle and in life to trauma and becoming healthier after trauma. And she has her own trauma experience. So I'm excited to have her here today. This month, I've been talking, and I talk a lot about the gut-brain connection. And I've been talking about trauma and actually the physiological effects that connect the brain and the trauma brain to the gut and how it affects our health. So I'm very excited to talk to her today, and we're going to get started. And at the end, what you can do is you can post your questions in the comment. I hope you comment and also like and subscribe to my page. And all right, let's get started. Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for coming today.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Great, great, great. So I know that you just got back from Ghana,
Yes.
as I mentioned, and you have one of your more recent books is 12 Steps to Mind-Blowing Happiness. And I was just looking at a YouTube video when you were in Ghana recently, when you were with another lady and you all were having a conversation about some of your experiences there. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience there and how your experience there is impacting your work here in the United States now?
Yeah, so, oh my gosh, it was life-changing. Like, it is really hard to find the words to describe the experience of visiting Africa. So I led a group of 12 on the Ghana Soul Healing Retreat. Part of the reason we chose Ghana, Ghana is very popular as a first visit to Africa location, but I also have a cousin who's been living there for 26 years. So she married a Ghanaian man, raised her children there. We're originally from New York, but she chose to live in Africa and she never came back. So it's,
Wow.
I was like, I need to find out what's going on with that. But I work as a coach. I'm also trained as an energy healer and yoga and meditation instructor. So I created workshops, what we call soul healing workshops, to prepare the participants, because we were all Black, for the experience of encountering I hate the word slave. It's like, I want to say dungeon for enslaved people, but they call them the slave dungeons. And processing that ancestral trauma, So we offered meditation and yoga just about every day, yoga nidra, but also, workshops to really help us process. And the last workshop that I offered was the 12 Steps to Mind-Blowing Happiness. So that was kind of like the celebratory workshop to bring you back into the States and, into normal life. I will say on my last day there, because I thought I was going to go to Ghana and be done with it, and next year take a bunch of people to Bali, but I felt like Jesus and Moses and Buddha and the universe all spoke to me and said, you got to bring more Black people to Africa.
Yes.
Yes. So that's the part that has really informed my work. I'm bringing another group to Africa, to Ghana next year. We're going to do it again. And as many as I can keep taking, I feel like it's it's become part of my purpose to bring people home.
Hmm. And I was really fascinated by your conversation with the lady that you met there that was on the last video that I saw
Yeah, Yala.
about about the experience of girls and their transition to womanhood, and what you all observed. And also, can you talk about how women commune there and how that transition experience translates to women in adulthood there? Because you talked about their connections being a bit different from how they are here. And I was really, because I just came back from my niece's debutante ball in December in Houston at this huge, and you talked about your daughter doing a debutante here
Yeah,
in the States, and that's really the only example that you could think of,
yeah.
girls transitioning. Hmm.
So, what we were learning out there, which was really interesting, and this was more historical. I can't speak on the current process, but the tribe that we had learned, the women would take the girls away for 6 months to
Hmm.
transition and teach them, how to take care of their bodies, how to deal with their men.
Hmm.
Um, and it was really it was it was a special time that marked that change from girlhood to womanhood.
Hmm.
So to me, there were so many levels of culture that
Hmm.
when I was there, it made me realize what we lack here. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
I think the biggest thing with the way that women relate to each other out there, again, comes from that shared culture. And
Hmm.
in the States, I always think of culture as kind of like food and music, maybe more of the things that you can see as opposed to some of the things that you can't see, like that
Hmm.
sense of everybody being related, the sense of family.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, I mean that was my experience there. I felt like, it really felt like I went home,
Hmm.
which is surprising, right? I'm going to a country I've never been to before in my life. And
Hmm.
even at the airport, people were like making me feel like they wanted me there,
Oh, wow.
which is like the opposite experience, that we have a
Wow.
lot of times in the
Wow.
country of our birth.
I'm going to pause for just a second. Okay, I love that you had that experience. And I was wondering, my next question was about what you noticed about spirituality, particularly in women in Ghana when you were there, or if you noticed.
One thing that I did find a little different in Ghana, because they just celebrated 66 years of independence from British rule,
Okay.
is that they are a mostly Christian country. So
Mhm.
while they do still have what they call traditional religions, and they do have this really rich, deep history, which is just feels like a big hug, it
Mhm.
was still kind of like, but they really still look up to the Christian faith,
Mhm.
where it's the faith of your colonizers, right? So I thought I was a little surprised by that. Um,
Mhm.
but I guess the people that I've experienced have not just like a lot of them have a blend where it's a little bit of Christianity and a little mix of this.
That's what
And here in the States
I've
too.
noticed in the States, people from Nigeria that a lot of them are Christian, but they have like the Yoruba or
Yeah.
different
Hmm.
traditions
And
mixed
I,
in.
and I guess that's the religious aspect, right? But when I think of spirituality, I think of more than that. So one of the things that I love to see, everybody in Ghana looks so healthy. There's
Mm.
so much walking. A
Mm.
lot of the roads are dirt, which we think
Mhm.
of as, not in the city, but outside the city. And we think of
Mhm.
dirt roads as, oh, they're undeveloped or underdeveloped or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, but dirt roads, you connect to the earth. You know what I mean? You're a little bit more connected.
Mhm.
Um, so it just felt like there was more nature. People were getting more natural exercise. You don't have to go to the gym if you're doing some walking. Um, the food was amazing. To me, food is a spiritual thing too. When you can get whole foods, Yeah, it just felt so clean and pure and just so much less altered than the processed foods that we get here. Like I felt amazing and we ate so well when we
Okay.
were out there.
Okay. Yeah, were people growing a lot of their food or were they going to a market daily to go get fresh food? Because I've been in other countries in Africa. I have not been to Ghana. And I was just wondering.
So in Ghana, they have what they call head porters, and they carry on their head like anything you could
Right.
possibly want. And apparently, there's a whole system for how people become head porters. And I'm going to mess up the story if I try to tell it. And there's a lot of people selling food at the side of the road. So I guess from their local farms, backyards, I don't know.
Yeah.
And honestly, some of it is me not doing a very good job expressing it. Like we learned so much, but they explain like how different groups would sell different products.
Uh-huh.
And then they also have like a huge marketplace, like
Okay.
incredibly large marketplace, outdoor marketplace,
Okay.
where foods are sold as well. And then they
Okay.
also have, like your traditional grocery stores like we would have. So there were a lot of options for
Okay.
for getting fresh produce.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then my last question about Ghana, and then I'm gonna get on to something else, was about you talked about in one of your videos about creating your sister circle, and you were just talking about the 12 steps um,
Mhm.
that you also did at the end. And what did you learn from the women who do these sister circles? Like what did you learn about their like what how do they feel about doing those? Do they feel that's like an essential part of their life? Is that or is it something that's on certain occasions that they do?
Well, let me explain that. I did a live stream when I was in Ghana that was
Okay.
creating your sister circle, and
Okay.
it was actually International Women's Day when I was there, and so
Oh, oh
yeah,
yeah, that's right. That's
yeah, so I wanted to talk about that topic. It
okay.
wasn't specifically related to Ghanaian women, although we talked about relationships, and I had one of the retreat participants with me who was an expat. She's actually from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and
Okay.
she had been out there about 10 years. But what I would love to share with your audience is a kind of a little test I put together for relationships, whether you're girlfriends or your partner, even with your kids. I call
Hmm.
it the GEM test. So
Hmm.
it's G is for good intentions,
Hmm.
E is for encouragement, M is for mutual respect.
Okay.
So sometimes we have people call us and we look at the phone and we're like, I don't want to pick the I don't want to talk to this person. Sometimes we have friendships that maybe have run their course and it's time to change them to an acquaintance or put them in the outer circle instead of the inner circle. But that's a good technique to use with anyone. Do they have good intentions when they speak to you, or are
Hmm.
they intentionally speaking to you in a way that is harmful?
Hmm.
Do they encourage you when you have something that is important to you, or do they shut you down?
Hmm.
And are you able to communicate with each other respectfully, or will they pop off and say whatever? You know what I mean? So you have some boundaries around that. So that was more of what we were talking about when we
Okay.
were talking about creating a community.
Okay. I
Mhm.
listened in depth to that gym conversation. I remember
It's a good
that.
one. It's a
Yes.
good one.
Yes, because I think everybody can relate to that too.
Yeah.
All
I
you
actually had a client after that who met with me who said, I listened to that and I realized that I don't have friends. And I was like, wow, but you know what? That's a great awareness to have. So
Mhm.
at least if you want to start building your network, you know what the goal is. And then if
Mhm.
you have people who are not meeting those criteria, then you know that you can put them a little on the side,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really got into that conversation that you had with the woman friend, because in the past 3 years, I had been going through that process. I didn't have a name for it, but I had gone through that process myself of sorting out and understanding
Mhm,
motivations. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Because it's amazing how you could be having a relationship with someone for years and not realize, until you start looking at it, like what's in it for them, what's in it for you. Is there a mutual benefit, or is it more
Or is it
lopsided?
one-sided?
Yeah.
Mhm,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, and that can add to your daily stress, because what I found with it was that there were certain people that may be calling me on the phone, and I wouldn't answer the phone because I knew that that was going to be a 1 hour conversation. I didn't have time for what they wanted to talk about, what I knew they would be calling for. So yeah,
Yeah,
it can be a source of stress. Yeah.
absolutely. But I tell you, that phone is your tool, so
Yeah.
you answer it when you want to.
Yes. So moving on to our hair, which is a source of, it could be a source of joy, or it could be a source of stress for many women. And I love that article that you talked about, Black women's hair and the products that we put on our hair and the
Mm,
toxicity. And I had knowledge of that, and I think I talked about that years ago, but of course, it really wasn't popular when I talked about it, so people just kind of passed over it. I told my friends about it because I wanted them to know about it. A lot of them just passed over it because they wanted to continue their behavior. But I think now it's in the forefront. We have women, forging forward with their natural hairstyles, and with our natural hairstyles. So um, I wanted to talk about what you revealed in the article. Can you talk about a little bit about the chemical straighteners and the damage that they cause, like what you found in your research?
yeah, I mean, like you, I knew some things, but it wasn't until I started researching the article, I was blown away. And I feel like some of the research was newer. Um, so maybe it had changed since the last time you had looked at it, but I was surprised how broad it was. It wasn't just relaxers. It was a lot of other products like anti-frizz products,
Yeah,
hair lotions. Then they got into the hair dyes. And then
yeah.
we got all into the wigs and the glues. And I was like, man, the funny thing, I don't know if I told you, my mother passed away of breast cancer
Mm,
in 2011. And
mhm,
when she passed away, I thought, well, gosh, she didn't really have any terrible habits, but
mhm.
she loved that relaxer.
Yeah.
She might have been 4 weeks in and she was getting in there. She
Mm.
just wanted to make sure that she didn't have any roots.
Yeah. Mhm.
She also used to do nails, which is another topic. But
Mm,
after that, I thought, I had gone back and forth with my hair for years. I would wear it natural when I felt like it and straighten it when I felt like it. But after that, I made a commitment. I'm like, you know what? Whatever I do, I'm not putting the chemicals in my hair anymore. What I found, let me see, I had pulled some of this in front of me. So the relaxers are associated with endocrine disruption. So it creates hormone problems, also, which I think is part of the reason why it's linked to fibroids. And
mhm,
the data on fibroids is that 80% of Black women have fibroids at some point in their life.
mhm,
And I was surprised 75% of Black women are still using relaxers,
mhm.
you know?
75%. Wow. I
Yeah,
didn't know
that
it was
was the
that
number
high.
as of what I looked at last year.
Okay. Mm,
Yeah.
mhm,
And when you think about it, when we live in big cities, maybe it's different.
mhm,
But I don't know. That's the number. It seemed it seemed high to me, but it's probably true.
mhm.
And then they also found it related to cancer, and I was surprised by the relationship to asthma.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And since I wrote that article last year, I've seen a lot of lawsuits. I'm sure you've seen them too, where
Mhm.
they're starting these kind of class action lawsuits against the manufacturers of some of these products.
Yeah, yeah, there's a big class action going on right now. Morgan and Morgan attorneys or whatever, they're collecting folks right now. So
Mhm.
yeah, I had made a commitment, I think it was like '04 or '05 when I did the big chop. Um,
Mhm.
that was when that was after my first wave of finding out about the straighteners and the relaxers. Um, I discovered in my practice that the dyes and the coloring were causing problems for all women, especially people
Yes.
that have sensitivity to grains and gluten because they use chemicals that are derived from GMO grains and also from gluten. So
Mm.
some of my patients would have like this huge allergic reaction after they got off of eating gluten or grains or both. And then their scalp would just start itching. They get a rash just suddenly. They go to
Oh,
the
wow.
hairdresser, dramatic, like the hairdresser would have to rinse everything out and just try to start treating their scalp because it was like a huge rash developing just instantaneously.
When they
Um,
stopped eating the gluten?
yes.
Oh.
Yeah, because their body got cleared of the gluten and the GMO grains, and then they're going back and getting an exposure, and they didn't know they were having a reaction before,
Oh.
stress reaction. The
Oh,
immune,
wow.
the immune system will adjust because it sees it keeps getting, and it keeps attacking, but the attack is like by a different mode. So you may not have rashes and things like that. So you have to withdraw the food for a while, and it takes different amounts of time for different foods.
Mm.
But that is a particular thing that's in the dyes and the hair coloring.
Wow,
And
I don't think I even saw that.
because they
What I
don't know what it's from. They haven't
Mm.
figured it out. Some hairdressers, because like this company that makes, I want to say it's Madison something. It's a plant hair dye. Like that one is gluten free. There are a few that are out that are gluten free, but generally the ones that are chemical based, it's harder to find a gluten free hair dye.
So
Mhm.
that's a non-toxic dye, the one that you're talking about?
Yes, Madison Reed. Madison Reed, that's
Mm.
the name of that one. Yeah, that's a commercial one. They have it for professional and they also have it like over the counter for people.
Okay, I gotta look for that because I had not seen much that
It's
was
henna.
non-toxic. I mean, they did say plant-based dyes and
Yeah,
henna.
henna. Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, but the hairdressers don't like messing with henna because it's
Well,
harder to
because it probably makes
control.
everything,
Yeah.
makes everything go change color.
And I had been to Europe a few times and I had looked into the cosmetics. So I knew a lot about cosmetics and the chemicals that are in them. So a lot of the things that you were talking about, the hair products, I knew that. But the thing that I learned from your article, and I want you to talk about the wigs and the associated, like the glues and the products. I
Yeah,
had never crossed my mind, but I've never done the glues and the products to attach. Always looking at
yeah,
it, I was thinking that doesn't look good, but I
yeah. There was a couple things that came up. One was alopecia, right? And we probably all remember, well, I shouldn't say everybody because I realize I'm getting older.
uh-huh.
But, a lot of us saw Susan Taylor, she used to be editor in chief at Essence, and
Mhm.
she wore those braids for so many
Right.
years. And we kind of watched her, hairline recede. So even natural hair, if you're braiding real tight, or if you're adding hair and you're braiding tight,
Yeah.
even with locks, if your locks grow long, you can get
Heavy.
traction,
Yes.
alopecia. Um, the other thing that came up that I hadn't heard about, and one of my girlfriends was telling me that she had, like, right at the crown of her head, she was starting to lose hair.
Mhm.
And that's a different alopecia that seems to come from, probably the pulling of the blow dryer with the relaxer, repeatedly. They
Yeah.
just kind of
And the
call
hair
it over
dye, because
processing.
the hair dye
And if you're
does.
doing dye, a lot of women, yeah, are
Mhm.
using the dye too. Makes the hair start to come out at the crown of the head. But yes, with the wigs, now people want to have lace front wigs. They're not just putting the wig on like they did in the 60s and pin it. They want to have the lace front with the glue, so it really looks like it's coming out of your scalp. But the glues, of course, I mean, it would be logical that it's blocking your pores, it's blocking the hair follicles. And then, it's just such a rude reality that in this quest to have hair, you're losing the hair that you have, you're damaging the hair that you have.
Mhm.
And many times we look at like Beyonce and all these women with these fabulous hair, but I'm like, Beyonce's wig is probably $10,000. Like, who knows? And she's got a whole team doing things. You can't just go slap on, the
Mm-mm.
Beyonce wig with glue and expect your hair to be healthy. Because when I see her, it looks like she's got a healthy head of hair under her wig, but she's got a team,
Yeah,
handling that. So yeah.
yeah. And then some of the weaves are glued too, but I don't know if people
Yeah.
still do that, but I remember like in the 90s, people were gluing these tracks in their
Yeah,
scalp.
they do. They do still have the gluing. I mean, if the gluing is not at your scalp, it's not such a big deal. Um, but many times you have the tight cornrows or the tight braiding underneath. And then if the gluing is at the scalp, yeah, there's a lot going on. I would just love to see a world where all Black people could just be having our natural hair out because I love Black hair,
Yeah, me
but I
too.
didn't grow my locks until I quit my job.
Yeah.
But I always wanted them, so
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about the chemical damage causing endocrine disruption. And unfortunately, I had fibroids and I had breast cancer more recently, like in the
mm,
years. And I'm sure it's from because those chemicals accumulate in the liver, and then your liver is not able to do the detoxification job it's supposed to do with your natural estrogens that your body's making. And then
mhm,
a lot of people have genetic issues that they don't understand that can affect what we call methylation. And it's a
mm.
process that happens in the liver. So the methylation that helps to detoxify both drugs and whatever chemicals come in your body, but also your natural hormones, it helps to detoxify those and take them out in the stool. So you're kind of crowding out the natural processes in the liver, and the liver is just overwhelmed. So, and we have
Yeah.
so many chemicals in our environment
And
that
we don't learn this stuff. You
no,
know,
no,
our culture is not one that's about prevention. It's all about wait till it breaks, and then you can spend a lot of money to fix it. But I
right.
remember, like when I was pregnant with my daughter, you get more advice when you're pregnant. Where they didn't want me to dye my hair. I
Mhm,
don't think at the time my hair wasn't relaxed anyway. But I
mhm,
just remember thinking, okay, well, if I'm not supposed to dye it while I'm
mhm,
pregnant,
mhm.
why should I be dyeing it after I'm pregnant? Clearly, there's something that's not good in there.
Oh yeah, that and
Mhm.
tuna fish. Do you remember them talking about tuna fish? Like when you're pregnant, they want you to limit to 1 can a week or less of
I
tuna.
don't remember the tuna fish. I remember sushi. I know sushi was
Oh yeah,
definitely,
sushi's another one.
something to avoid. Um,
Yeah, it's the heavy metals that are in tuna. Yeah, that
well,
they
I don't eat any of that stuff anymore.
yeah,
So I've been vegan since 2014. So
right,
it's been a
right,
while now. Yeah.
right.
Mm.
So to wrap it up, I'm gonna just ask you to tell us about a retreat or a program that you have up coming up soon that addresses trauma and the adjustment that I was talking about that people.
Yeah. So,
Mhm,
the first step to my 12 steps to mind blowing happiness, which I use as a framework for a lot of my work,
mhm,
particularly for my private coaching work. But
mhm,
the first step is healing. So
mhm,
that is really where we are looking at, you know, how healed do you feel? Because
mhm.
we all have stuff. Like, I don't think I've ever met anyone who doesn't have some level of trauma. I mean, just being a Black woman in the United States,
Forgiven,
just that.
forgiven. Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm.
so I haven't met anybody who hasn't have had some level. But the programs that I have coming, and if anybody wants to connect with me, you can go to blackgirljoytalk.com and schedule some time with me. The things I have coming up is the Ghana Soul Healing retreat. We're going back in 2024. So I am booking people for that now. I'm also taking on a few new private clients. I have some space for a few private clients. And then in May, I will be launching the new Black Girl Joy Experience, which is a 6-month program to go through the 12 steps to mind-blowing happiness with a group and get some group coaching. So I got a lot of good stuff going on.
You do. And then what is your book going to be about that's coming out in 24?
I'm glad you asked me. So the 5th step to mind-blowing happiness is about transforming anger. So we look at transforming it either to peace or some sort of constructive action. So in the book, I teach my 5-step approach to transform anger. And the title of the book is called The Anger Myth, Understanding and Overcoming the Mental Habits That Steal Your Joy.
That is so
good stuff,
relevant to Black women. And you take men in your program too, in that program?
I'm glad you asked that question. So private coaching, I definitely coach men. Okay. And the Ghana Soul Healing Retreat, men come, you can come with your family. Okay. For the group coaching, of course, the Black Girl Joy Experience is women. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And the reason why I asked that is because in my spiritual studies, like when I had the cancer, a lot of times cancer and these autoimmune diseases are driven by the emotions of like anger and resentment. It's very, very common. And I think when we look at our culture, there's a lot of, because initially I couldn't figure out where mine was coming from, but it's years and years of, this trauma of like being the only Black person in the whole hospital. Or the only Black person
in the whole hospital.
When I did my first residency in internal medicine at Harvard, the hospital where I was, there was one other Black woman, but she was not in residency. She was in fellowship and she was going to different hospitals. So I wouldn't see her. Just sometimes I would see her. Yeah.
I mean, it's real. It really is. In the book, I talk about anger's 7 cranky cousins, and you mentioned resentment is one of them, but it could also be disappointment, frustration, jealousy, guilt, just, all of these kind of aggravations that we have when things are not going the way that we think they should go. And it becomes internalized, it can make you sick. Besides making you unhappy, it can make you physically sick.
So I think that there are a lot of people that can benefit from that type of program, even if they don't think they have anger or a related emotion, because all those that you talked about are kind of, they
all
branch
have them.
off. And I've been talking this week about adverse childhood experiences, and that's like a kind of a baseline for a lot of people, most people, and they don't realize, and then it kind of builds up on that over the lifetime, right? And so you have to peel off all these layers, and it will make you sick. It'll make you have autoimmune disease. It'll make you have cancer. So I hope people take advantage of what you're offering. And I will, in the show notes, post links to your site. Are all these going to be accessible from your site or?
Yes. So if you go on my website, which is trishahjelroberts.com, you will see the link there to book what I call a discovery call. So you can definitely go on there and put yourself on my calendar, because what I'll do is, I'll do a little assessment with you. One of the nice things that I've instituted recently are metrics, very specific metrics. So when you coach with me, we start off with an assessment so we know exactly where you are. Every 3 months, we do another assessment. So you can literally look back and say, oh my gosh, I'm like 20% more healed, or, my spiritual satisfaction's grown 30%, So it's really nice to have those numbers, because sometimes change can be so nuanced and subtle that if you don't track it, you're not really sure what's happening. So yeah, I would love to meet some of your folks. That would be fantastic.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here today. I appreciate all the information that you've provided here today. It's going to be so helpful for a lot of people. So thank
Thank
you
you, Serena.
so
It was a
much.
pleasure.